I'm going to give you feedback on your PowerPoint. I like the first slide, opening slide. It's a good application of subject matter principle. And also, with this photo, your students will be able to relate to their own experience. It looks like the picture started pixelating a little bit, but should be okay. From a distance, it looks good enough. And I know that the white border around it is a part of the picture, and it doesn't look too bad, so you can leave it as is. I just want to try something though. Okay. Theoretically, not having extra elements is supposed to be a good for learning, but the thing is you're going to be projecting it onto a projector screen, which is white. Having a white border around it that much is not going to probably matter, so you could probably just keep the background as is. I still think about the contrast though, text contrast here. Okay, what do you think about this version? I think it's a little easier now to read than earlier. So basically I pay attention to that contrast and the text size. Also alignment a little bit. This could be, you could try enlarging to the limit as much as possible when you try to show a picture or a diagram. Judging from how you're going to use this diagram, it doesn't really matter if it's not at the optimum size. One thing I noticed was the bottom line here. You don't really have to have this, so you could probably get rid of it. Okay, so there are steps. Let's see, there's step 1 through step 9, and you're going to describe those steps. And step 1, coming up with an idea. So the title, that's good. So the challenge is going to be how much easier and how easy can you make it to understand each step by using these visual aids. And what I notice here is this PowerPoint is somewhere between presentation aid, visual aid, and a self-study material. So I say somewhere in between. If it's for the self-study, I think you would put more text and information. But if it's for the visual aid for your lecture or presentation in class, you have more text than necessary. You're going to be talking about all these, and a little redundancy in terms of providing keywords and cues with text, that's okay, but too much redundancy will not help as much, or in some cases it's going to work against students learning. Students are getting verbal information from your speaking, so more efficient and effective way to use PowerPoint slides would be to provide a graphic representations rather than verbal representations. With that in mind, let's take a look at the first step. Key point here is going to be by anyone. That's the key, first important concept, the first important piece of information. It could be from concerned citizens. So those are the examples. Concerned citizens, special groups, state agency, or the governor. So let's think about what are the things you want to convey to your audience, and what are the things you want your students to learn in here or pay attention to or think about. There's like one important concept here and 4 examples here. So those are the things you want to emphasize here. So while you're saying it, you might want to reinforce it with visuals. So how can you do that? There are 2 different ways. You can use pictures, or you can use text to reinforce what you're saying. And I definitely suggest going with pictures rather than text. I'll tell you what I mean by that. This is what I mean by reinforcing what you're saying by using text. And this is something a lot of people do, but this is what we're trying to do here. Even if you're going to use text for a presentation aid or visual aid, this format, this design is not how you're supposed to be doing it. Let me show you what I mean by a different design, different approach. Instead of packing all the content into a single slide, if you really want the slides to help you present the information, this is how you do. So you're going to talk about an idea is suggested by, and actually you could also ask questions to your students. So you can have your students guess whom. Then you say anyone and show this. Then you move on to say it could be from. Then instead of just saying, providing the answers, you could also have your students guess from whom. You can have a little discussion or Q&A session. If you hear the answer, you could go like, sure, yes, concerned citizens. And you can give clues and hints so that they'll come up with this answer. Then you say, yes, concerned citizens. Then you again guide your students to come to this answer, then show special groups. Of course, if they can't come up with the right answers, you can just say from concerned citizens, special groups, a state agency, and the governor. So you use the text to reinforce, these are all keywords. and you use the text to reinforce what you're saying or the important point you're making, and that's already better than showing this as you talk about this. So don't think the slides have to be neat to look at later. The slides are helpers for the presentation and the presentation only. Making it easier and user-friendly for their students to look at later for self-study is a totally different thing. For self-study materials, you definitely want to group certain things together. This approach is definitely not a good way to go. For self-study material, this is much better way to go, and this is actually even better way to go. But when you use it for presentation, it doesn't work very well. So now I want to show you how you can use pictures this time to support, to aid your speaking. So in that case, you could probably use the same slides for some parts. Idea is suggested by, and you ask questions and they brainstorm and you provide the answer, anyone. Then it could be from whom, then you ask this question and your student's gonna guess who. Then instead of providing the key concepts in text, here you can show pictures. You can show a picture of concerned citizens. It can be you, your own photo, and you can say, I'm a concerned citizen, instead of showing special. And here you can show a picture of special groups. If you can't find a good picture of a special group, you can find the logos of the special groups as well. Then you can find a picture of a state agency and agent. Probably you could probably find a good picture for this too. And the governor, for that you show this picture. And when you show the picture, make sure you follow the multimeter principle. Don't do the death by PowerPoint either. This is a thumbnail stamp, so you want to make it as large as possible, because there's no reason why you shouldn't use the entire space available. There's no point leaving the top like this or bottom like that. So try to make the better use of the available space. So now you apply the same idea, same concepts and techniques to the step number 2, introducing the bill. So when you think about the step, you need to decide what things you need to really emphasize here. The senator is one of the things that you want your students to remember, to understand. It could be 2 things that are important here: senator and the legislature. So you can use same concept, same technique like that, or you can go with this technique. I'll show you the 3rd technique you can use, which is equally effective, which is a diagram. You can use a diagram. This is what I mean by diagram. The senator introduces the bill to the legislature. I use just a text to draw this diagram. And you can also apply multimeter principle to the diagram and use a picture. You can put a picture of a senator above here, and down here you can put a picture of legislature, and you can put a picture of some stack of paper or something. Sketches, diagrams, drawings are ideal to illustrate relationships or mechanisms, systems, and things like that. So in a case like this, it is often more effective than using either approaches I showed you, this approach or these approaches. But again, it's not always more effective. So you got to know when to use it and when not to use it. So apply those ideas and techniques to the step number 3, public hearing by the committee. So you use the different colors to signal what the keywords are here. And traditionally, a lot of people show the verbal information first, then show pictures to illustrate what you talked about earlier. But by providing the verbal information and visual information, graphic information together, that's actually a modality principle. That works better than showing verbal information first, then moving on to the picture, graphic information. There's a temporal gap there, and also spatial gap as well. And the learner needs to fill the gap, make connections in their head, and it puts unnecessary burden on learners' cognitive processing. When they can successfully do that, it is actually pretty good learning, so it's not a problem. But putting extra burden like that could decrease the learning process that's happening in their brain. So you gotta be careful about that. So I would suggest more synchronization with the text, verbal information with the visual information. Okay, so as you talk about this, a public hearing, so you can show a picture of public hearing of the bill. And when you say by the committee, you can show this photo, because this is a committee members, then where citizens have a chance to express their opinions, and you can show the picture of a citizen or citizens expressing their opinions. So you could have two pictures, one picture for this part and one picture to aid or reinforce this part. And I would say diagram is not as effective in this case as it was in this case. So try to apply the same ideas and techniques for the remaining steps. Step 4, General 5 voting. And so here, senator is one of the things you want to emphasize here. And amendments. And debate and vote. So there are three things. You could use images to further elaborate on what you mean by senator consider amendments to debate and vote on bills. And this is kind of like a symbolic way to use a picture, because it doesn't really talk about the senator consider amendments to debate. It kind of ties into vote actually, but I think you can do a better job with the pictures. So again, consider what you want to emphasize, what points, what parts of the lesson here you want your students to pay attention to and visualize and understand. So enrollment and review. Amendments are incorporated, so that's one of the steps, and the bill is checked for technical and grammatical accuracy. So you're talking about two things here. You can definitely further elaborate on what you're talking about here. And when you do that, you can actually show the example of actual amendments. If you can put hands on the document, photocopy or picture of documents that are actually checked for technical grammatical accuracy, it's a really good way to visually support what you're talking about. But it's going to be pretty tough to find pictures or examples like that. So go through the same thought process for remaining steps, and you definitely should expand each slide. Lastly, as you have noticed, if you're not going to be using this layout, design, or strategy, just to use one slide per step, if you're moving away from this strategy or this technique, the background design or slide layout or design is not going to work anymore. So be free to use just a blank slide like this and design each slide as you need it to be. So discuss in your group what sorts of changes you need to make. I'm looking forward to seeing what actual changes you've decided to make to your PowerPoint.